Thank you for staying with us. Now, Mozambique is swearing in its new parliament following contentious elections in October, which opposition leader Venancio Mondlane claims were rigged to favor President Daniel Chapo and the ruling Frelimo party. Official results gave Chapo 65% of the vote, while Mondlane insists that he won with 53%. Now, two opposition parties, Renamo and MDM, are boycotting the swearing-in ceremony, calling it a betrayal of the people's will. But months of protests over the results have left around 300 people dead, including security personnel, and caused significant economic disruptions. Mondlane, backed by the Podemos party, has called for peaceful protests and a national strike to oppose the inauguration of the new parliament and also Chapo's presidency. Now, joining me on the show to speak more on this, we have Dr. Wilker Dias, his Executive Director, Decide Platform. Thank you so much for joining us on the conversation this evening.
Thank you so much and good evening.
Good evening. Now, let's begin with, let's kind of start from the beginning. In your assessment, what evidence do you think supports Venancio Mondlane's call or claim that the October election was actually rigged in favor of the ruling Frelimo party?
I think the first thing we can say to have in the mind for now, it's not the Venancio win or Daniel Chapo win, but the first thing that we need to look and talking about it's what's happening during the election. And during the election, we make the observation of the whole process in Mozambique, more specifically in 5 provinces. But we have the other organization make that completely job in all the all countries or the other in the other province, like Mas Integridade, for example, he make the job in the other province, and we have the same things. What is the same thing? The same thing is the we saw a fraud during our process. What is the fraud we saw during this process? We saw the people are changing the ballots. We see the people are making put more than one vote inside of the vote stations. We saw the change of the boxes of for the vote process, and after that we saw the violation of the other things in during this process, like for example in the centralization of the results. The National Commission of Election on some regions in our country don't call the other parties to go in there to try to make some protest, for example, during the counting of the votes and etc. So we have the other type of the irregularities we saw during this process. And the parties in Mozambique, more specific, all the parties in the opposition, submit or apply one file court in the different courts in Mozambique. And the Constitutional Council said, yes, we received that process, but we don't have any final decision. But at the same way, that Constitutional Council makes some final decision on this process, but he don't make a mention or don't have the final decision of that cases we saw during this whole process. So this is one other violation we saw during this process. So that is the reason we said the most part of the time we have the ballots, we have the other official documents, but the most part of this case we saw and we said we saw fraud during this process. That is the reason we saw so many people in the streets, because it's not only what the platforms, electoral platforms in Mozambique say, but the people in the streets, in the social networks, saw the videos, saw the photos. So that is the reason we have that protest in the streets.
Okay. Now that, Mondlane is returning from exile and also calling for peaceful protests, how effective is this strategy? in challenging the legitimacy of Chapo's presidency. And I'm speaking in light of, the recent violence that has already erupted in the country.
I think for Venancio Mondlane, the most strategic for now is to return to Mozambique and try to find one solution inside, and to try also to show the people when we are united, we can go together and maybe we can win that battle. I think that is the message, or the principal message that Venancio Mondlane try to share with the Mozambican people at this time, because when the all demonstrations start in all country, the most part of Mozambique are fighting together against the electoral results and etc. But after I think after 1 month and a half, when we saw some people are destroyed, some private infrastructure and public infrastructure, so the Mozambican people right now are divided. So I think that division in particular are created different opinions. We have one part that say, no, we don't make some the destruction of the infrastructure and we need to fight. We have another part that people said, no, we don't need to continue to fight because that people destroyed our infrastructure. But the most part, I said, that type of destruction is still one thing to try to divide, to create one division in the public opinion in Mozambique and try to retire all power during that demonstration. And it's one of the consequences of that act, for example, from the police or the other principal actor during this process. So I think Venancio Mondlane returned to Mozambique to try to put the people together to fight against that all process we saw in the streets.
Well, I also remember, the last time we spoke, we talked about how the protests have actually, disrupted the economy, in terms of cross-border trade, mining, shipping, and the likes. Now, looking at it, how significant is this impact on Mozambique's economy? Are there long-term implications if the protests continue?
Yes, for Mozambique, that demonstration created so many problems in our economy. I think it's not only for Mozambique, but it's from our region, in particular in SADC region. When I said SADC region, you look, for example, for South Africa. South Africa, I think it's the most affected economy because we have one border, most famous border here in between Mozambique and South Africa. It's the Lebombo border, and I think in per day we are lost more than 20 millions of medicals, or more than this. I don't remember. But it's a lot of money. I think it's billions of medicals we are lost per day during this whole demonstration. And you look also for the other countries where make that corridor to the interland, for example, in Zimbabwe, Malawi, Zambia, they lost too much within the commerce sector. And for example, to the fuel, to have fuel from our ports in that sector, they lost so many resources during this process. In Mozambique, it's not only because that cooperation with the other countries, but inside in our country, we saw other type of things. For example, we have infrastructure destroyed during this process. We have the economy are stopped during this process. So we have so many things are affected during this whole process, and I think that will cost too much to our country.
Oh, okay. Now let's talk about Renamo and MDM. are boycotting the new parliament swearing in. Do you think that their absence would affect the legitimacy, of the new government and also the balance of power in the legislature?
I think the first thing, what can I say about that subject? It's very important to say that today it's the most sad day of our democracy in Mozambique. What is the most sad day in democracy in Mozambique? The parties who should defend the democracy in Mozambique are make some mistakes to go to that inauguration. We go in the first step for Podemos. After that, I will give one explanation about that. And in the second place, we have the international organization who agree with that results. When we had that organization make the observation during this process in Mozambique, like European Union, for example, and we saw him in that inauguration. But he made mention he saw some signals of fraud during this process. We saw other countries who that agree with that results. In Mozambique, some European countries we saw during this process in Mozambique, and that countries said in the most part of the time we defend the democracy, we defend the human rights, but in particular there are we saw that countries in the inauguration, in the one contest of the most part of the organization, local organizations show what's happening in our country, that countries go to that inauguration. I think this is one of the most ridiculous things to say about that subject. And at the same time, when we see the inauguration of that persons in the parliament, we saw people dying by the police because the police shoot real bullets. And this morning and this afternoon, during this process, we have 12 people shot by the real bullets from the police. We have 4 deaths during this whole process. We have the other.
Well, we seem to have lost Dr. Dias, but I think with that, we have to wrap up the show at this moment. Thank you so much, Dr. Wilker Dias, Executive Director, Decide Platform, for speaking to us on this.